Pay very close attention, because what you are about to hear was never meant for you. It was never meant for the average person scrolling through their phone at 2 in the morning, looking for another distraction, another escape. This knowledge was buried, demonized, banned, and burned for centuries, not because it was wrong, but because it was too dangerous in the hands of those who truly understood it. There is a book, a small, almost insignificant-looking book, that has been read in silence by presidents, generals, billionaires, and kings. They read it behind closed doors. They never quote it in public. They never recommend it in interviews. And yet, it sits on their nightstands like a loaded weapon. That book is The Prince, by Niccolò Machiavelli. And today, you are going to understand why it terrifies the powerful, and why it could set you free. But let me be honest with you before we begin. This is not a history lesson. This is not a philosophical overview for your next dinner conversation. This is a confrontation, a direct, unflinching confrontation with everything you were taught about power, morality, success, and human nature. If you are not ready for that, leave now. Close this video. Go back to the comfortable lies that have kept you small. But if something in you, something quiet, something restless, something that refuses to stay asleep, is telling you to keep watching, then stay. Because by the end of this, the way you see the world will never be the same again. Let me ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly, even if only to yourself. Have you ever done everything right? Been kind, been fair, been honest, played by the rules, and still lost? Still been overlooked? Still been betrayed? Still watched someone with half your talent, half your integrity, rise above you simply because they understood something you did not? Of course you have. Everyone has. And here is the part no one tells you. It was not bad luck. It was not an accident. It was not some cosmic injustice. It was ignorance. Your ignorance. You were operating under a set of rules that the people above you abandoned a long time ago. You were playing chess while they were playing war. And war has only one rule: win. This is not cruelty. This is not cynicism. This is the cold, unvarnished architecture of reality. And Machiavelli was the first person brave enough, or reckless enough, to write it down. Think about this. You wake up every morning and enter a world that is, beneath its polished surface, a theater of power. Your workplace is not a team. It is an arena. Your friendships are not all unconditional. Some are transactions wrapped in affection. Your relationships are not just about love. They are negotiations of influence, attention, and control. You know this. You feel this. You have always felt this. But you were told to ignore it. You were told that thinking this way makes you cold, makes you manipulative, makes you a bad person. And that is the first lie that keeps you powerless. Because the people who told you to be good, to be humble, to be transparent, many of them were not following their own advice. They needed you to be predictable. They needed you to be manageable. They needed you to stay exactly where you are, believing that goodness alone is a strategy. It is not. Goodness without intelligence is a cage. Virtue without awareness is a target painted on your back. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. He lived it. He breathed it. He watched it destroy men far greater than himself. As a diplomat in Renaissance Florence, he stood in rooms with popes and princes, with warlords and merchants, and he saw the same pattern over and over again. The ones who survived were not the most moral. They were the most aware. The ones who thrived were not the kindest. They were the most adaptable. And the ones who fell, the ones whose names history forgot, were the ones who confused the world as it should be with the world as it is. That distinction between what should be and what is the foundation of everything you are about to learn. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote something that has echoed through 5 centuries of power. A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so many who are not virtuous. Let that settle into you. Read it again in your mind. He is not telling you to abandon virtue. He is telling you that virtue without strategy is suicide. He is telling you that in a world full of wolves, the sheep who refuses to acknowledge the existence of fangs is not noble. It is dinner. And this is why the powerful read this book in secret. Not because they are evil, not because they lack morality, but because they understand something that you are only now beginning to grasp. The game is already being played. Whether you choose to participate or not, you are already a piece on the board. The only question is whether you are the one moving the pieces or the one being moved. Now let me tell you why this knowledge was hidden from you. Why, for centuries, Machiavelli's name became a synonym for evil. Why teachers, priests, politicians, and moralists have spent 500 years trying to bury this man's ideas. It is simple. His ideas make power transparent, and power, true power, depends on opacity. It depends on the masses not understanding how it works. The moment you understand the mechanics of influence, the moment you see the strings behind the puppets, you become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent sense. Dangerous in a way that is far more threatening to those who hold power. You become uncontrollable. Think about the systems around you. Education teaches you to follow instructions, not to question who wrote them. Corporate culture teaches you to be a team player, not to ask who designed the game. Social media teaches you to seek validation, not to ask why your self-worth was outsourced to strangers in the first place. Every single one of these systems benefits from your ignorance. Every single one of them needs you to remain asleep. Machiavelli is the alarm clock, and the powerful know it. That is why they read him in private. That is why you will never hear a CEO stand on a stage and say, "I owe everything to the prince." That is why political leaders will quote Marcus Aurelius in public, but study Machiavelli in private. There is a version of wisdom that is acceptable, palatable, safe. And then there is the version that actually works. The version that gets results. The version that they keep for themselves. Until now. Because today, you are going to cross that threshold. You are going to step into the room that was locked. You are going to sit at the table that was reserved, and you are going to learn what they learn. Not the sanitized academic version, but the raw, applied, ruthless version that changes the way you move through every interaction, every relationship, every negotiation for the rest of your life. But first, you need to understand something fundamental about Machiavelli himself. Because the man has been grotesquely misrepresented for 500 years, and that misrepresentation is itself a masterclass in power dynamics. Niccolò Machiavelli was not a tyrant. He was not a dictator. He was not a villain. He was a servant of the Florentine Republic, a man who believed in governance, in stability, in the protection of the state. He was a diplomat who traveled across Europe, who negotiated with kings and cardinals, who saw firsthand the difference between leaders who endured and leaders who fell. And when he was eventually exiled, tortured, and stripped of everything he had built, he did what only a truly brilliant mind would do. He wrote down everything he had learned, not for revenge, not for fame, but because he believed that the truth about power, ugly, uncomfortable, inconvenient as it was more valuable than all the pretty lies combined. The prince was never a manual for tyranny. It was a mirror held up to the face of power itself, showing it exactly as it was, not as people wished it to be. And like all mirrors, it reflected something that most people did not want to see. Here is what Machiavelli observed, distilled into a truth so simple it is almost offensive. Human beings are predictable. We are driven by fear, desire, self-interest, and the need for security. We are loyal when it benefits us and disloyal the moment it costs us. We admire strength and despise weakness, even as we preach the opposite. We say we value honesty, but we reward those who tell us what we want to hear. We claim to seek justice, but we follow those who project certainty. This is not pessimism. This is observation. And the gap between what people say they value and what they actually respond to, that gap is where all power lives. Now let me bring this into your life, because this is not about Renaissance Italy. This is about your Monday morning, your Tuesday afternoon meeting, your Friday night conversation. You walk into a room. You have an idea, a good idea, maybe even a great idea, but you present it softly. You qualify it. You say things like, I could be wrong, but, or this is just a thought, but, or does anyone else think? And what happens? Someone else takes your idea, rephrases it, presents it with confidence, with authority, with certainty, and they get the credit, they get the promotion, they get the respect. This is not because the world is unfair. This is because you violated one of Machiavelli's most fundamental principles. It is better to be bold and make mistakes than to be cautious and be ignored. The world does not reward the best ideas. It rewards the ideas that are presented with the most conviction. It does not follow the wisest person in the room. It follows the person who appears the wisest. And appearance, controlled, strategic, deliberate appearance, is the first weapon in the arsenal of the powerful. You have been trained to believe that substance matters more than style, that your work should speak for itself, that humility is strength. And in a perfect world, all of that would be true. But we do not live in a perfect world. We live in Machiavelli's world. A world where perception shapes reality, where the image you project determines the opportunities you receive, where the way you are seen is often more important than who you actually are. This does not mean you should be fake. It does not mean you should be hollow. It means you should be intentional. There is a vast difference between deception and strategy. Deception is wearing a mask to hide who you are. Strategy is choosing which parts of who you are to reveal, when, and to whom. Machiavelli did not teach deception. He taught awareness. He taught selection. He taught the art of controlled revelation. Think about the most powerful person you know. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, the most powerful. The one whose presence changes the temperature of a room. The one who does not chase attention but commands it. The one who speaks rarely but is heard always. What do they know that you do not? They know that power is not given. It is taken, not through force, but through positioning. They know that every interaction is an exchange of value, and the person who controls the frame of that exchange controls the outcome. They know that silence is not emptiness. It is a weapon loaded with mystery. They know that emotions, unchecked, are the fastest path to defeat. And they know that the world does not care about your intentions. It only cares about your results. These are not cold truths. These are liberating truths. Because the moment you accept them, the moment you stop fighting reality and start working with it, everything changes. You stop being the person things happen to and start being the person who makes things happen. You stop waiting for permission and start granting it to yourself. You stop hoping to be noticed and start engineering your own visibility. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river. When it floods, it destroys everything in its path. But the wise person builds levees and channels before the flood arrives, directing the water where they want it to go. You cannot control the chaos of life, but you can prepare for it. You can position yourself so that when the storm comes, and it always comes, you are not swept away. You are standing on higher ground, watching the flood carry away everyone who refused to prepare. And this is the secret the powerful guard most jealously. Not any single tactic, not any specific manipulation, but the mindset. The lens through which they see every moment of every day. They do not see the world as a place of random events, They see it as a chessboard. Every person is a piece. Every conversation is a move. Every silence is a strategy. Every smile, every handshake, every email, every pause, all of it is calculated. Not with malice, with precision. You might resist this idea. You might feel it in your stomach. A tightening, a refusal. That is your conditioning speaking. That is the part of you that was trained to believe that seeing the world clearly is somehow wrong. That strategic thinking is manipulation. That awareness of power dynamics makes you a bad person. Let me dismantle that belief right now. Is the doctor who studies disease evil for understanding how viruses spread? Is the general who studies war immoral for understanding how battles are won? Is the psychologist who studies human behavior corrupt for understanding how people think? No. Knowledge is neutral. It is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used to build or to destroy. Machiavelli gave you the blueprint. What you build with it is your choice. But choosing to remain ignorant is not virtue. It is vulnerability. And in a world where others have already read the blueprint, your ignorance is not protecting you. It is exposing you. So let me ask you again. Do you want to keep playing by rules that were designed to keep you small? Do you want to keep believing in a version of the world that was carefully constructed to make you compliant? Or do you want to see? If you want to see, then stay with me. Because what comes next will change the way you understand every person you meet, every word you hear, and every move you make. The first thing Machiavelli teaches, the bedrock, the foundation, the beginning of everything, is this. Understand the nature of the game before you play it. Most people walk through life reacting. Something happens. They respond. Someone insults them. They react. An opportunity appears. They scramble. A crisis hits. They panic. They are perpetually one step behind, always responding to a world that seems to move faster than they can. The powerful are different. They do not react. They anticipate. They study the terrain before they step onto it. They understand the motivations of every person in the room before the meeting begins. They know what their opponent wants before the negotiation starts. They have already played out the conversation in their mind, every possible path, every possible outcome, before a single word is spoken. This is not genius. This is preparation. And preparation, in Machiavelli's world, is the difference between the prince who keeps his throne and the prince who loses his head. You can do this, starting today, starting now. Before you walk into your next meeting, ask yourself, what does every person in this room want? Not what they say they want, what they actually want. Before you have your next difficult conversation, ask yourself, what is this person afraid of? Not what they show, what they hide. Before you make your next decision, ask yourself, who benefits? Not on the surface, beneath it. These questions will transform you, not because they give you power over others, but because they give you clarity. And clarity, true, piercing, unflinching clarity about human nature and human motivation, is the most valuable currency in any arena you enter. Machiavelli knew this. The powerful know this. And now, you are beginning to know it too. Now here is something that will disturb you, and it should. Every day you interact with people who have already internalized these principles, whether consciously or instinctively. Your boss who always seems to get their way. They understand framing. The friend who somehow always ends up in the center of attention without appearing to try. They understand strategic positioning. The negotiator who walks away with everything while you feel grateful for the scraps. They understand leverage. You are surrounded by Machiavellians. Some of them read the book. Most of them did not need to. They learned it from observation, from instinct, from watching the world with open eyes while you kept yours politely closed. And this leads to perhaps the most uncomfortable realization of all. You have been manipulated. Not once, not occasionally, consistently. Every time you said yes when you wanted to say no, someone understood your fear of conflict and used it. Every time you gave more than you received, someone understood your need for approval and exploited it. Every time you stayed silent when you should have spoken, someone understood your desire to be liked and weaponized it against you. This is not an accusation. This is a liberation, because the moment you see the strings, you can never be a puppet again. The moment you understand how influence works, not in theory, but in the flesh and blood reality of your daily life, you graduate from being a subject to being a sovereign. You stop being governed by the strategies of others and begin to govern yourself. Machiavelli put it with devastating simplicity. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Sit with that for a moment. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is not a call to deception. This is a call to intentionality. Right now, your appearance, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you react under pressure, is accidental. It is the product of habit, conditioning, and unconscious patterns. You are broadcasting a signal you never designed. The powerful design their signal, every element, every frequency, every word and every silence between the words. They understand that in a world of surfaces, the person who masters their surface controls the narrative, and the person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. You have spent your entire life being told that what is inside is what matters, and in a moral sense, perhaps it does. But in the arena of power, in the marketplace of influence, in the theater of human interaction, it is what is perceived that determines your fate. The brilliant mind that cannot communicate its brilliance is functionally invisible. The kind heart that cannot protect itself is functionally exploited. The strong will that cannot project authority is functionally irrelevant. Machiavelli did not create these rules.
He simply had the courage to document them. And the 5 centuries of outrage that followed his documentation tell you everything you need to know about how threatening the truth is to those who profit from your ignorance. So, here is your choice. And it is a choice. Perhaps the most important one you will make today. You can close this video, return to the comfortable fog of unawareness,
and continue being moved by forces you do not understand. Or you can keep your eyes open, endure the discomfort of seeing clearly, and begin, for the first time in your life, to play the game on your own terms. There is no middle ground. There is no partial awakening. You either see the board or you remain a piece on it. But we are only at the beginning. The surface has barely been scratched. What you have heard so far is the foundation, the first layer of stone upon which the fortress is built. The real architecture, the strategies that will reshape the way you move through this world, the specific principles that billionaires and strategists apply every single day, all of that is still ahead. If you have understood what has been said so far, if something inside you has shifted even slightly, then stay. Because what comes next is not theory, it is application. It is the cold, precise machinery of power laid bare for you to see, to study, and to use. Continue watching. The most dangerous lesson is still ahead. Now that the veil has been lifted, now that you have seen the first glimpse of the world as it truly operates, it is time to go deeper. Much deeper. Because understanding that power exists is not enough. Understanding that the game is being played around you is not enough. You need to understand the mechanics, the architecture, the invisible machinery that drives every human interaction, every negotiation, every silent battle for dominance that plays out in boardrooms, bedrooms, and every space in between. Machiavelli did not deal in abstractions. He dealt in patterns. He watched men rise and fall, and he catalogued the reasons with the precision of a surgeon documenting the anatomy of the human body. What he found was not random. It was systematic. There are principles, cold, repeatable, universal principles, that separate those who hold power from those who are held by it. And today, you are going to learn the most critical of them. The first principle is this: the mastery of perception. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come and touch you. Read that again. Let it burn into your understanding. Everyone sees you. Almost no one truly knows you. And in that gap, between what is seen and what is known, lies the entire battlefield of power. You think your reputation is built on your actions. It is not. Your reputation is built on other people's interpretation of your actions, and interpretation is shaped by presentation. Two people can perform the exact same task. One is praised, the other is ignored. The difference is never the task. It is always the frame. Consider this. Two employees submit the same quality of work. One sends it in a plain email with a single sentence. Here's the report. The other sends it with a brief, confident message highlighting the key insight, the strategic implication, the decision it enables. Same work, radically different perception. The first is seen as a worker. The second is seen as a thinker. And thinkers get promoted. Workers get more work. This is not superficiality. This is intelligence. Because in a world where attention is the scarcest resource, the ability to frame your contribution, to control how your actions are interpreted, is not vanity. It is survival. Machiavelli understood that the prince who appears strong is strong, regardless of his actual military power. The prince who appears decisive is trusted, even when his decisions are uncertain. The prince who appears calm in crisis is followed, even when he is terrified inside. Appearance, in the calculus of power, is not secondary to reality. It is the primary force that shapes reality. Now, before you recoil at this, before the part of you trained to value authenticity protests, consider this. You already manage your appearance every single day. You dress differently for a job interview than you do for a Sunday morning. You speak differently to your manager than you do to your closest friend. You present a different version of yourself on a first date than you do after 10 years of marriage. You are already performing. The only question is whether you are performing consciously or unconsciously, strategically or accidentally. The powerful perform consciously. They choose their words with the precision of an architect choosing materials. They control their facial expressions the way a musician controls their instrument. They understand that every room they enter is a stage, and every interaction is a scene, not because they are fake, but because they refuse to leave their impact to chance. This brings us to the second principle, emotional sovereignty. There is a passage in Machiavelli that the modern world desperately needs to hear. He observed that men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. But beneath this observation lies a deeper truth. The reason people are so easily influenced is that they are governed by their emotions rather than their judgment. Fear, anger, the desperate need to be liked, the terror of being alone, the craving for validation. These are not feelings, these are leashes. And as long as you are attached to them, you can be led anywhere by anyone who understands how to pull them. Watch what happens in any argument. Two people disagree. One loses their temper. The moment they lose their temper, they lose the argument, regardless of whether they were right, because the person who maintains composure controls the frame. The person who remains calm while the other erupts is automatically perceived as the rational one, the mature one, the one in control. The emotional person may have had every valid point in the world, but none of it matters once they have surrendered their composure. Machiavelli saw this play out at the highest levels of statecraft. The rulers who endured were not the ones who felt less. They were the ones who governed what they felt. They experienced fear but did not display it. They felt anger but channeled it into calculation. They understood desire but did not let it dictate their actions. Their emotions were servants, not masters. You need to develop this same sovereignty, not emotional suppression. That is a different prison. Emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel everything and be controlled by nothing. The ability to observe your own anger rising and choose, with surgical precision, whether to express it, redirect it, or dissolve it. The ability to notice your fear and use it as information rather than as a command. Here is how this looks in practice. Someone insults you. The untrained person reacts immediately, defends, attacks, crumbles. The emotionally sovereign person pauses. In that pause, that fraction of a second of deliberate stillness, they assess. What does this person want from me right now? What reaction are they trying to provoke? And what response serves my interests, not their provocation? That pause is the most powerful weapon you will ever develop. It is the space between stimulus and response, and within that space lives your entire freedom. The person who masters that pause masters every interaction, because they are never reacting, they are always choosing. The third principle cuts even deeper, the strategic use of silence. In a world drowning in noise, silence is the ultimate currency of power. Machiavelli observed that the prince who speaks too freely gives his enemies the ammunition to destroy him. But silence, calculated, intentional, purposeful silence, does something remarkable. It creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. When you are silent, other people fill the space with their own projections, their own assumptions, their own fears. And in doing so, they reveal everything about themselves while learning nothing about you. Think about the most intimidating person you have ever encountered. Chances are, they did not talk much. They listened. They observed. They let the room swirl with energy and noise while they sat in the center like the eye of a storm. Still, watchful, and infinitely more aware than anyone else. Silence is not passivity. It is the most active form of communication. When you remain silent after someone makes a demand, you force them to fill the void. And they will almost always negotiate against themselves. When you pause before answering a question, you signal that your response carries weight, that your words are not thrown carelessly into the air, but placed deliberately, like stones in a foundation. When you refuse to defend yourself against a petty accusation, you communicate that the accusation is beneath you and that communication is louder than any denial could ever be. The weak talk to fill their discomfort. The powerful let their silence make others uncomfortable. There is a famous story, perhaps apocryphal but instructive, about a negotiation between two heads of state. One spoke for 20 minutes, laying out demands, arguments, justifications. The other sat motionless, face unreadable, saying nothing. When the first finally stopped, breathless and exposed, the second simply said, "No." One word, after 20 minutes of argument. And that single word carried more force than all the eloquence that preceded it. This is the power of silence. It concentrates your energy. It amplifies your authority. It makes every word you do speak land with the weight of a verdict rather than the lightness of chatter. Now let me show you how these three principles, perception mastery, emotional sovereignty, and strategic silence, work together in the arena of real life. Imagine you are in a professional meeting. A colleague challenges your idea publicly. They are aggressive. They are condescending. They are clearly trying to diminish you in front of others. The average person does one of two things. They either fight back immediately, matching aggression with aggression, or they shrink, apologize, defer. Both responses lose. The Machiavellian response is different. You remain still. Your face does not change. You let them finish their attack. You let the room feel the weight of their aggression against the contrast of your composure. And then, only then, you respond. not to their emotion, to their argument, calmly, precisely. You dismantle their point with facts, delivered without heat, without ego, without any indication that their attack affected you in the slightest. What happens? The room shifts. The aggressor is suddenly exposed, not by your attack, but by their own loss of control reflected against your deliberate calm. You did not fight them. You let them defeat themselves. And every person watching made a judgment. One person in this room is in control, and it is not the one who was shouting. This is applied Machiavelli. This is the philosophy in motion. And it works. Not because it is clever, but because it is aligned with the fundamental architecture of human psychology. We follow composure. We respect restraint. We are drawn to those who seem to possess something we lack. And what most people lack desperately is control over themselves. The fourth principle is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all, the economy of generosity. Machiavelli warned that a prince who is generous to all will eventually exhaust his resources and be forced to become oppressive to replenish them. Better, he argued, to be thought miserly at first and generous strategically, so that your generosity carries impact rather than expectation. Translate this into your life. How many times have you given freely, your time, your energy, your help, your emotional labor, and received nothing in return? How many times have you been the person everyone calls when they need something, but no one calls when you need something? How many times have you sacrificed your own needs to maintain relationships that would collapse the moment you stopped giving? This is not generosity. This is self-erasure disguised as virtue, and it attracts exactly the wrong kind of people. People who value what you provide, not who you are. Strategic generosity is different. It is intentional. It is selective. It is generous when generosity creates genuine connection or strategic advantage, and it is withheld when generosity would be consumed without appreciation or reciprocity. It does not keep score in a petty sense, but it is acutely aware of patterns. If someone consistently takes without giving, that is not a relationship. It is a parasitic arrangement. And the strategist does not sustain parasitic arrangements. Machiavelli was not against generosity. He was against foolish generosity, the kind that depletes you, that trains others to expect your sacrifice, that turns your kindness into a leash they use to lead you wherever they please. The powerful give strategically. They help the people who will remember and reciprocate. They invest in relationships that are mutual, not one-directional. They understand that every act of generosity is an investment, and investments should yield returns, not necessarily material returns, but returns in loyalty, in respect, in the kind of deep alliance that sustains you when the storm comes. Now let me introduce the fifth principle, and this one will redefine the way you see every relationship in your life, the mapping of self-interest. Machiavelli was perhaps the first thinker to insist, without apology, that all human behavior, all of it, can be understood through the lens of self-interest. Not greed, not selfishness in the petty sense, but the fundamental, inescapable truth that every human being, in every interaction, is unconsciously calculating. What does this do for me? This sounds cynical until you apply it honestly. Why do people help others? Sometimes out of genuine compassion, but even compassion serves the self, because it makes us feel good about who we are. Why do people stay in relationships? Sometimes out of love, but even love serves the self, because companionship fulfills our need for connection and security. Why do people donate to charity? Sometimes out of pure altruism, but even altruism serves the self, because giving activates the same neural pathways as receiving. This is not an indictment of humanity. It is a map. And once you have the map, you can navigate any terrain. When you understand that every person you interact with is driven by some form of self-interest, you gain an extraordinary power, the power of alignment. Instead of trying to convince people through argument, you align your proposal with their self-interest. Instead of begging for cooperation, you show them how cooperation serves them. Instead of wondering why someone betrayed you, you examine what interest your loyalty no longer served. This is not manipulation. This is clarity. Manipulation is using someone's interests against them. Alignment is creating situations where your interests and theirs move in the same direction. The first is exploitation. The second is leadership. Machiavelli understood that the most effective leaders were not those who demanded loyalty, but those who made loyalty the most attractive option. Not through threats, though threats had their place, but through the intelligent architecture of incentive. They made it easy and rewarding to follow them, and costly and uncomfortable to oppose them. Not through cruelty, but through strategic design. You can do the same in your life. You do not need to threaten anyone. You do not need to manipulate anyone. You simply need to understand what people want and position yourself as the pathway to it. Your boss wants results that make them look good. Deliver those results visibly, and you become indispensable. Your partner wants to feel valued and understood. Provide that consistently, and you become irreplaceable. Your competitor wants the same opportunity you want? Find a way to redefine the game so that your path to success does not require their defeat. This is the genius of Machiavellian thinking, not in its ruthlessness, but in its realism. It does not ask you to become a predator. It asks you to become a strategist, to see the world not as you wish it were, but as it actually operates, and then to move through it with the precision and awareness that most people will never develop. Let me consolidate what you have learned so far. 5 principles, 5 pillars of the Machiavellian framework. First, master perception. Understand that you are always being observed, always being judged, and that the image you project is the reality others act on. Design that image with intention, not accident. Second, achieve emotional sovereignty. Feel everything, be controlled by nothing. Develop the pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause, choose your action rather than being chosen by your reaction. Third, wield silence strategically. Speak less. Listen more. Let your silence create weight, mystery, and power. Make your words rare so that when they come, they land with force. Fourth, practice strategic generosity. Give with intention. Invest your energy in people and situations that reciprocate. Refuse to sustain relationships that survive only on your sacrifice. Fifth, map self-interest. Understand what drives every person you interact with. Align your goals with theirs. Create architectures of mutual benefit rather than zero-sum battles. These 5 principles, applied consistently, will transform you from a passenger in your own life into the architect of your reality. They will not make you cold. They will not make you cruel. They will make you aware. And awareness, true, strategic, unflinching awareness, is the most compassionate thing you can develop. Because the person who understands the game can choose how to play it. The person who is ignorant of it has no choice at all. But here is what the powerful understand that you do not yet. These principles are not separate tools to be applied individually. They are interconnected. They form a system. Perception mastery without emotional sovereignty is theater, convincing on the surface but fragile under pressure. Emotional sovereignty without strategic silence is wasted. You maintain your composure but fail to leverage it. Silence without an understanding of self-interest is emptiness. You say nothing but understand nothing. And self-interest without generosity is isolation. You see clearly, but connect with no one. The master, the true Machiavellian, the person the powerful read about and aspire to become, weaves all five into a single seamless way of being. They perceive and project simultaneously. They feel and calculate in the same breath. They listen and assess in the same moment. They give and receive in the same interaction. They are not switching between modes. They are operating on a level where all of these principles are active at once, like a musician who no longer thinks about individual notes but hears the entire symphony. This is what you are building toward, not a collection of tricks, a transformation of consciousness, a new way of seeing, thinking, and moving through every moment of your existence. But the coldest move, the most precise application of these principles, that is still ahead. What comes next is not theory, it is the machinery itself. The specific step-by-step application that takes these ideas from your mind and plants them in your muscles, your voice, your posture, your decisions. Curious to know how this translates into the exact moments of your daily life? Stay with me. The practical architecture of power is next. Now we enter the territory that separates the philosopher from the warrior. Because knowing the principles is one thing. Living them, embedding them into the texture of your daily interactions, your decisions, your very posture, is something else entirely. And it is here, in the space between understanding and execution, that most people fail. They read, they nod, they feel inspired, and then they walk back into their lives and do exactly what they have always done. Not you, not after this. What follows is not abstract, it is surgical. Specific tactics, specific scenarios, specific responses that you can deploy starting today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because Machiavelli did not write for people who wanted to think about power. He wrote for people who needed to use it. Let us begin with the most common arena of power: conversation. Every conversation you have is a negotiation. Every single one. Whether you are discussing where to eat dinner or negotiating a salary, there is always an exchange occurring beneath the surface, an exchange of status, influence, and control. The person who understands this has an immeasurable advantage over the person who does not. Tactic 1. The controlled opening. When you enter any conversation, especially a high-stakes one, the first 30 seconds set the frame. The frame is the invisible structure that determines who leads, who follows, and what the conversation is actually about. Most people enter conversations reactively. They wait for the other person to set the tone. They mirror the energy of whoever speaks first. This is surrender before the battle begins. Instead, set your own frame. Walk into the room with a specific energy. Calm, grounded, unhurried. Make eye contact before you speak. Let a beat of silence pass. Then open with a statement, not a question. Not, "So, what did you want to discuss?" But, "I have been thinking about this situation, and here is what I see." The difference is seismic. The first position makes you the respondent. The second makes you the architect. Machiavelli observed that the prince who allows others to set the terms of engagement has already conceded half the battle. The terms of any interaction, the frame, the pace, the emotional register, are set in the opening moments. Control those moments, and you control the trajectory of everything that follows. Here is a specific scenario. You are walking into a salary negotiation. The typical approach is to wait for the employer to name a number first. The logic seems sound. Let them anchor, then negotiate from there. But Machiavelli would see through this immediately. By waiting, you are ceding the frame. You are saying silently, "You tell me what I am worth." The Machiavellian approach. Before the number is ever discussed, you reframe the conversation entirely. You say something like, "Before we discuss specifics, I want to share what I have delivered in the last 12 months and where I see my trajectory here." You are not asking for money. You are establishing value. You are not negotiating from need. You are negotiating from position. By the time a number enters the conversation, The other person is no longer evaluating your request. They are responding to the reality you have constructed. This is perception mastery in action. Tactic 2, the strategic question. Most people ask questions to get information. The powerful ask questions to direct thinking. There is a vast difference. When you ask, "What do you think we should do?" you surrender leadership. When you ask, between approach A and approach B, which aligns better with our target, you maintain control. Both are questions. One gives away the frame. The other keeps it firmly in your hands while appearing collaborative. Machiavelli understood that the wisest advisors were not those who gave answers, but those who shaped the questions. Because the person who defines the question defines the range of acceptable answers. And the person who defines the range of acceptable answers controls the decision without appearing to decide. Practice this. In your next meeting, instead of making a statement that could be argued, pose a question that leads the room to your conclusion. Instead of saying, "I think we should change the strategy," say, "Given the results we have seen, what would need to be true for our current strategy to succeed?" That question does your work for you. It forces everyone to confront the data. It leads them to the conclusion you already hold. But they arrive at it themselves, which means they own it, defend it, and act on it. This is not trickery. This is the art of influence through architecture. You are not forcing anyone to agree with you. You are building a structure of reasoning that makes your conclusion the most logical destination. Machiavelli would call this the construction of inevitability, the arrangement of conditions such that the outcome you desire appears not as your preference, but as the only rational path. Tactic 3, the disciplined response to provocation. This is where emotional sovereignty meets real-world application. And it is perhaps the most immediately transformative skill you can develop. Someone attacks you, verbally, professionally, personally. They question your competence. They undermine you in front of others. They say something designed to wound, to destabilize, to force you into a reaction that diminishes your standing. Here is exactly what you do. And I want you to memorize this, because it will save you more times than you can imagine. Step 1. Do not move. Do not shift your posture. Do not cross your arms. Do not lean forward. Stillness is your first weapon. The aggressor expects motion, defense, retreat, counterattack. Your stillness breaks their script. Step 2. Maintain eye contact. Not aggressive, not challenging, steady. The kind of eye contact that says, "I hear you, I see you, and I am not disturbed." This alone will unnerve most aggressors because their power depends on your emotional response, and you are not giving one. Step 3. Pause. Count to 3 in your mind. This pause does several things simultaneously. It communicates that you are choosing your response rather than reacting. It creates tension that the aggressor cannot control, and it gives you time to select the most strategic reply. Step 4. Respond to the logic, not the emotion. If their attack contains a legitimate point, acknowledge it calmly and redirect. That is an interesting perspective. Here is what the data actually shows. If their attack is purely emotional, address it with measured clarity. I understand you feel strongly about this. Let us examine it objectively. If their attack is personal, dismiss it without heat. I appreciate your candor. Now let us get back to the issue. What you have done in this sequence is remarkable. You have taken an attack designed to put you on the defensive and transformed it into a demonstration of your composure. You have shown the room and the attacker that you cannot be destabilized. You have turned their aggression into evidence of their weakness and your stillness into evidence of your strength. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince does not respond to every provocation, for in doing so, he elevates the provocateur. Choose your battles with the precision of a surgeon choosing where to cut. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every challenge requires engagement. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can do is nothing at all, and let the silence communicate what words never could. Tactic 4. The architecture of refusal. One of the most common ways people lose power is through their inability to say no. Not because they want to say yes, but because they have been trained to believe that refusal is confrontational, selfish, or unkind. This training is a leash, and it is time to cut it. Saying no is not aggressive. It is the most fundamental expression of sovereignty. Every time you say yes to something that violates your priorities, you are saying no to yourself. Every time you accept a demand that serves someone else's agenda at the expense of your own, you are reinforcing the hierarchy that places their needs above yours. But the art is in how you refuse. Machiavelli understood that a blunt refusal creates enemies, while a strategic refusal creates respect. There is a way to say no that leaves the other person feeling heard, respected, and yet firmly redirected. Here are the formulas. Study them, practice them, deploy them. The redirect. I cannot commit to that right now, but here is what I can do. This preserves the relationship while maintaining your boundary. You are not rejecting them. You are redefining the terms, the higher priority. I would like to, but my current commitments would suffer, and I do not deliver anything at less than my best. This frames your refusal as a matter of quality, not reluctance. It communicates standards, not selfishness. The delay. Let me think about that and get back to you. This is the simplest and most versatile tool. It buys you time, prevents impulsive agreement, and communicates that your commitment is not given lightly. Most people who hear this will either solve the problem themselves or reduce the scope of their request. The reversal. That is an interesting request. What would you need from me specifically, and what would you be able to contribute? This turns a one-sided demand into a negotiation. It signals that your help comes at a cost, not monetary, but relational. You are not a resource to be depleted. You are a partner to be engaged. Practice these until they become automatic, because the person who cannot say no is a person who cannot be respected, and the person who is not respected is a person who holds no power. Tactic 5. The cultivation of mystery. Machiavelli observed that the prince who is easily understood is easily defeated. Predictability is a weakness. When people can anticipate your every move, your every reaction, your every decision, they can control you without you ever realizing it. They know which buttons to push. They know which compliments will soften you. They know which threats will move you. You are an open book, and they are reading you like a manual. Mystery is not about being cryptic or difficult. It is about maintaining a reservoir of depth that others cannot fully access. It is about revealing enough to engage, but never so much that you are fully mapped. Here is how you do this practically. First, stop narrating your life. Stop announcing your plans before they are executed. Stop explaining your reasoning before the results speak for themselves. The common instinct is to share, to tell people what you are working on, what you are thinking, what you are feeling. Resist this. Let your actions communicate. Let the results reveal the strategy after the fact. Second, diversify your responses. If you always react the same way to the same stimulus, you become predictable. If someone knows that a compliment will make you agreeable, they will compliment you before every request. If someone knows that criticism will make you defensive, they will criticize you whenever they need you off balance. Break the pattern. Sometimes meet a compliment with cool detachment. Sometimes meet criticism with genuine curiosity. Keep people slightly off balance, not through malice, but through the simple refusal to be a machine that produces the same output for every input. Third, cultivate the art of the unexpected. Machiavelli admired leaders who could surprise, not through chaos, but through strategic unpredictability. The leader who is sometimes generous and sometimes reserved, sometimes gregarious and sometimes withdrawn, sometimes lenient and sometimes firm. That leader cannot be managed, cannot be gamed, cannot be reduced to a formula. And what cannot be reduced to a formula is, by definition, powerful. Now let me address the errors, the traps that destroy even the most promising students of power. Error 1. Confusing strategy with paranoia. Machiavelli was a strategist, not a conspiracy theorist. Seeing the world clearly does not mean seeing enemies everywhere. The goal is not suspicion, it is awareness. There is a critical difference. Awareness says, people have interests, and those interests may not align with mine, so I will navigate accordingly. Paranoia says, everyone is against me. The first empowers you, the second imprisons you. If you find yourself trusting no one, seeing betrayal in every shadow, interpreting every innocent act as a hidden threat, you have gone too far. Pull back. Recalibrate. Machiavelli was not afraid of the world. He understood it. And understanding brings confidence, not fear. Error 2. Performing power instead of possessing it. This is the trap of the amateur. They read about composure and become rigid. They read about silence and become mute. They read about strategic perception and become theatrical. True power is not a performance. It is a condition. You do not act composed, you become composed. You do not pretend to be unbothered, you develop genuine equanimity. The performance of power fools no one who actually has it, and it reveals your insecurity to everyone who can see. The solution is practice. Daily, persistent, patient practice. You do not develop emotional sovereignty in a single conversation. You develop it over hundreds of conversations, thousands of moments where you choose response over reaction. You do not master perception in a day. You master it over months of intentional self-awareness, of asking after every interaction, what did I project? What was perceived? How can I refine? Error 3. Applying these principles without ethics. This is the error that gives Machiavelli his dark reputation, and it is important to address directly. Everything you have learned can be used for exploitation. Every tactic can be weaponized against people who trust you. The power of silence can become the cruelty of the silent treatment. The mastery of perception can become the art of deception. The mapping of self-interest can become the science of manipulation. But this is not what we are building here. We are building sovereignty, not tyranny. The difference is intent. The tyrant uses these tools to control others for personal gain at their expense. The sovereign uses these tools to navigate reality with clarity, to protect themselves and those they care about, to build something of lasting value. Machiavelli himself was not a tyrant. He was a patriot, a man who wanted his republic to survive in a world of wolves. His tools were harsh because the world was harsh, but his purpose was preservation, not destruction. Check your intent regularly. Ask yourself, am I using this to build or to destroy? Am I creating value or extracting it? Am I strengthening my position in a way that also strengthens those around me, or am I rising by pushing others down? The answer to these questions is not a philosophical abstraction. It is the line between the leader and the predator. Stay on the right side of it. Error 4. Isolation. Power without connection is a prison. The most common mistake among those who discover Machiavellian thinking is to withdraw, to see everyone as a potential adversary, to guard themselves so completely that they become unreachable. This is death, not physical death, but the death of everything that makes power worthwhile. Machiavelli himself valued alliances above almost everything else. He wrote extensively about the importance of choosing the right friends, the right advisors, the right allies. The prince who stands alone falls alone. Your power is not diminished by genuine connection. It is amplified The strategist, who has loyal allies, trusted confidants, and reciprocal relationships, is infinitely more powerful than the one who has none. The key is discernment. Not everyone deserves your trust. Not everyone has earned access to your inner circle. But those who have demonstrated loyalty, reciprocity, and genuine care, should be held closely and treated with the same strategic generosity we discussed earlier. Your fortress is strong, not because it has no doors, but because the doors open only for those who have proven worthy. Error 5. Impatience. Perhaps the most destructive error of all. You have been given a framework that, applied consistently, will transform every area of your life. But the operative word is consistently. This is not a weekend project. This is not a 30-day challenge. This is a fundamental rewiring of how you perceive, process, and respond to the world. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes the kind of patience that most people, addicted to instant results and immediate gratification, cannot sustain. Machiavelli compared fortune to a river. You cannot redirect a river in a day, but you can, over time, build channels that guide it where you want it to go. Start small. Practice the pause in one conversation today. Set one frame deliberately tomorrow. Refuse one request strategically this week. Observe one interaction through the lens of self-interest. These small acts, compounded over weeks and months, create a transformation that no single dramatic gesture could achieve. The powerful did not become powerful overnight. They became powerful through the relentless, patient, unglamorous application of principles that most people are too distracted or too impatient to sustain. You now have the same principles. The only variable is your commitment. At this point in our journey, something has already shifted inside you. You can feel it. The way you are processing these words is different from how you would have processed them an hour ago. The lens through which you see the world has been reground, refocused, sharpened. And that sharpness, that new clarity, is irreversible. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you now know. This is the transformation that Machiavelli set in motion 5 centuries ago, and it continues to ripple through every mind that encounters his work with genuine openness. You are not the same person who pressed play on this video. The person who existed before these words has already begun to dissolve, replaced by someone more aware, more intentional, more sovereign. But the transformation is not complete. Not yet, because awareness without integration is just information. And information without embodiment is just noise. The final phase, the phase where everything crystallizes, where the principles become not just thoughts, but a way of being. That is what awaits you in the final chapter. This is the final transformation, and it begins now. You have walked a long road to reach this point. And if you are still here, if you have absorbed every word, every principle, every tactic, then something fundamental has changed in you. Not on the surface. Deeper than that, in the architecture of your thinking, in the way your mind processes the world, in the space between your perception and your response. You are not the same person who began this journey, and the world, as you will now move through it, is not the same world. But before we close, before you step back into the noise and chaos of daily life, carrying everything you have learned, there is one final layer. One final truth that Machiavelli embedded so deeply in his work that most readers miss it entirely. And it is, perhaps, the most important thing he ever wrote. Here it is. The ultimate purpose of power is freedom. Not dominance, not control over others, not the accumulation of status or wealth for its own sake. Freedom. The freedom to choose your own path without being dictated to by circumstance. The freedom to speak your mind without being crushed by those who disagree. The freedom to walk away from any situation that diminishes you, knowing that your survival does not depend on anyone's approval. The freedom to be fully, unapologetically, strategically yourself, in a world that profits from your conformity. This is what Machiavelli was truly writing about. Beneath the cold analysis of statecraft, beneath the unflinching observations about human nature, beneath the tactical advice about alliances and warfare, there is a man who had lost everything and was writing his way toward a single burning question. How does a person maintain their sovereignty in a world that constantly conspires to take it away? That question is your question. It has always been your question. Every time you felt powerless, every time you were overlooked, every time someone else's agenda overwrote your own, you were confronting that question. And now, after everything you have heard, you have the beginning of an answer. Let me describe who you are becoming. Not who you were, who you are becoming. Because this is not a destination, it is a direction, a trajectory, a way of moving through life that grows stronger with every passing day. You are becoming the person who enters a room and changes its temperature. Not through volume, not through aggression, through presence. The kind of presence that comes from a mind that is fully awake, fully aware, fully engaged with reality as it is rather than as it pretends to be. People will feel it before they can name it. They will notice something different about you, a stillness, a weight, a gravity, and they will not be able to explain it, but they will respond to it. They always do. You are becoming the person who speaks with precision. Every word chosen, every sentence constructed, not to impress, but to impact. You are shedding the habit of verbal clutter, the qualifiers, the apologies, the unnecessary explanations. In their place, you are developing a communication style that is direct without being harsh, confident without being arrogant, minimal without being cold. Your words are becoming arrows, fewer in number, but each one finding its mark. You are becoming the person who is no longer held hostage by emotions. Not because you do not feel. You feel deeply, perhaps more deeply than before, because awareness amplifies everything. But because your emotions are no longer driving the vehicle. They are passengers, important passengers whose input you value, but you are behind the wheel. You decide when to accelerate, when to brake, when to change direction. Your fear informs you but does not govern you. Your anger alerts you but does not control you. Your desire motivates you but does not enslave you. You are becoming the person who understands silence, who knows that the most powerful thing you can say is often nothing at all, who has discovered that in the space between words lies an authority that no amount of eloquence can match. You no longer rush to fill every pause. You no longer explain yourself to people who have not earned the explanation. You no longer defend yourself against accusations that are beneath your dignity. Your silence has become a language, and it speaks volumes. You are becoming the person who chooses their battles with the precision of a general studying a map before deploying forces. You no longer waste energy on conflicts that serve no purpose. You no longer rise to every provocation. You no longer feel compelled to prove yourself to people whose opinion has no bearing on your life. You have developed the most underrated form of strength, the ability to let things go, not out of weakness, but out of an absolute clarity about what matters and what does not. You are becoming the person who gives strategically, whose generosity is a force, not a weakness, who invests their time, energy, and care in people and causes that reciprocate, and who has the courage to withdraw from those that do not. You are no longer the person who says yes to everything and suffers in silence. You are the person who says yes with intention and no with grace. And perhaps most importantly, you are becoming the person who sees the board, the entire board. Not just your corner of it, not just the pieces immediately in front of you, but the whole sprawling, interconnected architecture of human interaction. You see the motivations behind the smiles. You see the strategy behind the kindness. You see the fear behind the aggression. You see the need behind the demand. And because you see all of this, you move differently. You move with the fluid, unhurried confidence of someone who understands the current, not because they can control it, but because they know exactly how to navigate it. This seeing, this relentless, unsentimental, compassionate seeing, is not something that was given to you. It is something you built, word by word, principle by principle, pause by pause. Every moment you chose awareness over autopilot, you laid another stone in the foundation of who you are becoming. Every time you resisted the urge to react and chose instead to respond, you strengthened a muscle that most people do not even know they have. Every time you observed instead of judging, listened instead of preparing your response, withheld instead of spilling, you became more of what Machiavelli envisioned when he wrote for the prince who deserved to rule. Not the one born to power, but the one who earned it through relentless, disciplined self-mastery. There is a loneliness in this transformation. I will not lie to you about that. When you begin to see the machinery behind human behavior, when you begin to recognize the patterns and plays that most people execute unconsciously, there are moments when the world feels colder, when the spontaneity of ignorance seems almost enviable, when you wonder if it was easier before the veil was lifted, before the lens was sharpened. But that loneliness is temporary, and it is the price of admission to a life that is truly your own. Because on the other side of that loneliness is something far more valuable than the comfortable numbness of unawareness. It is the deep, unshakable peace that comes from knowing exactly where you stand, exactly what you are capable of, and exactly how to move through a world that no longer confuses you. The crowd is warm, yes, but the crowd is also blind. And blindness is not warmth. It is just shared darkness. You have chosen the cold clarity of higher ground. And from that ground, you will see further, act with greater precision, and build something that the crowd, for all its warmth, can never construct. This is the metamorphosis. This is what Machiavelli's philosophy, properly understood, truly offers. Not a descent into cynicism, but an ascent into sovereignty. Not a loss of humanity, but a refinement of it. Not a hardening of the heart, but a strengthening of the mind that protects the heart from those who would exploit its openness. And here is the paradox that makes this transformation so profound, so unexpected, so distinctly Machiavellian. By learning to see the world through the lens of strategy and power, you actually become kinder. Not weaker, kinder. Because when you are no longer operating from fear, your generosity is genuine rather than performative. When you are no longer desperate for approval, your connections are authentic rather than transactional. When you are no longer reactive, your compassion is deliberate rather than reflexive. The person who understands power does not need to use it aggressively. The person who knows they can say no does not need to say it harshly. The person who has mastered the art of influence does not need to manipulate. The person who is truly strong does not need to prove it. This is the truth the critics of Machiavelli never understood. They saw the tools and assumed the worst about their use. They saw the clarity and mistook it for cruelty. They saw the realism and called it cynicism. But Machiavelli was not writing for cynics. He was writing for realists who dared to build something in a world that punishes naivety. You are now one of those realists. Let me consolidate everything. Let me give you the framework one final time, stripped to its essence, so that you carry it with you like a compass. Principle 1. Perception is reality. The world responds to what it sees, not what you intend. Control your image with the same seriousness with which you control your actions. Design the impression you make. Do not leave it to accident. Principle 2. Emotional sovereignty is the foundation of all power. The person who controls their emotions controls every interaction. Develop the pause. Master the art of choosing your response rather than being chosen by your reaction. Feel everything. Be controlled by nothing. Principle 3. Silence is your most versatile weapon. In a world of noise, the person who speaks least is heard most. Use silence to create mystery, to project authority, to force others to reveal themselves. Let your words be rare and therefore powerful. Principle 4. Generosity must be strategic. Give with intention. Invest in reciprocal relationships. Refuse to sustain arrangements that deplete you. Your time and energy are your most precious resources. Allocate them with the precision of a sovereign managing a treasury. Principle 5. All human behavior can be understood through self-interest. Do not resent this. Use it. Align your goals with the interests of others. Create situations where cooperation is the most attractive option. Lead not through force, but through the intelligent architecture of mutual benefit. Principle 6. And this is the one that ties everything together. Power exists to serve freedom. Your freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms, to build what you envision, to protect what you love, to walk your own path regardless of the noise around you. If your pursuit of power does not ultimately serve your freedom, you have lost the plot. And if your freedom does not extend to those you care about, you have missed the entire point. Machiavelli spent his final years in exile, stripped of his position, denied his purpose, writing by candlelight in a farmhouse outside Florence. And yet, in those lonely hours, he produced a work that would outlive every prince, every pope, every king who had ever silenced him. His power was not in his title. It was not in his office. It was not in his political connections. His power was in his mind, in his clarity, in his refusal to pretend that the world was anything other than what it was. That same power now lives in you, not because you have read a book or watched a video, but because you have made a choice. The choice to see clearly, the choice to think strategically, the choice to govern yourself before attempting to influence anyone else. That choice, more than any tactic or technique, is the true mark of the Machiavellian mind. And the world will test this choice. Tomorrow, next week, in every meeting, every conversation, every relationship, every moment of crisis and calm, you will be tested by people who try to provoke you. You will be tested by situations that demand your reaction. You will be tested by your own old habits, the urge to explain, to apologize, to seek approval, to react before you think. When those tests come, and they will come, remember this: you are not the person you were before. You have seen behind the curtain. You have studied the architecture. You have held the blueprint of power in your hands and understood its every line. You cannot go back to sleep. The only path is forward. And forward means practice, not perfection. Practice. Machiavelli himself made mistakes. He miscalculated. He trusted the wrong people. He was outmaneuvered by those he underestimated. But he never stopped learning. He never stopped observing. He never stopped refining his understanding. And in the end, that relentless commitment to clarity is what made him immortal. Not his successes, but his refusal to stop evolving. You will make mistakes too. You will lose your composure. You will say too much when you should have been silent. You will react when you should have chosen. You will give too much to someone who gives nothing back. These are not failures. They are data. Every stumble is information. Every setback is a lesson. And the person who treats their failures as education rather than defeat is the person who eventually transcends every obstacle in their path. There is one more thing I want to leave you with. One image that I want you to carry in your mind as you step back into the world. Imagine a fortress, not a castle built for show, a real fortress. The kind that has withstood sieges, weathered storms, endured centuries. Its walls are thick, but not impenetrable. There are gates, carefully positioned, that open for allies and close against threats. Inside, there is warmth, strategy, purpose. The fortress does not chase, it does not beg, it does not explain itself to those outside its walls. It simply exists, formidable and grounded, drawing people toward it through the sheer gravity of its presence. You are that fortress, not yet fully built perhaps, but the foundation has been laid, the walls are rising, and with every principle you apply, every pause you master, every silence you wield, every strategic choice you make, the fortress grows stronger. Machiavelli built his fortress with words. You are building yours with awareness, and awareness, once achieved, is a fortress that no one can breach. Now comes the moment of declaration. If this message has reached you, not just your ears, but something deeper, something quiet, something that has been waiting for exactly this, then I want you to do something. Not for me, for yourself. Comment below the phrase, "I see the board now." This is not a comment. It is not engagement bait. It is not a click for an algorithm. It is a declaration. A line drawn in the silence between who you were and who you are becoming. When you type those words, you are telling yourself, and anyone watching, that you have crossed a threshold that most people will never cross. That you have chosen awareness over comfort, strategy over sentiment, sovereignty over submission. I see the board now. Type it, mean it, and then live it. And when you subscribe to this channel, and I say when, not if, because the person who has come this far does not walk away, know that you are not pressing a button. You are entering a fortress, a place where we do not trade in comfortable illusions or easy answers, a place where the only currency is truth, raw, unflinching, unapologetic truth about human nature, about power, about the game that is played every day in every corner of this world. You are joining a community of minds that have chosen to see clearly, to think strategically, and to build their lives with the same intentionality with which Machiavelli built his legacy. This is your fortress now. Enter it. And so, we come to the end. But it is not really an end. It is a beginning. The most dangerous, the most exciting, the most transformative beginning of your life. Because everything that came before this moment was preparation. Everything that comes after is execution. Go now. Walk back into the world with your eyes open and your mind sharpened. Enter every room as though you have already studied every person in it. Speak as though every word is a stone placed in the foundation of your reputation. Listen as though every silence is a weapon waiting to be deployed. Give as though your generosity is a strategic investment, not a reflex. Refuse as though your boundaries are the walls of a fortress, not the whims of a selfish mind. And above all, move through every moment with the quiet, absolute certainty that you are no longer being played, because you have finally, irrevocably, permanently learned to see the game. Machiavelli once wrote that there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. You are introducing a new order, not in a nation, but in yourself. And while the world may not understand what has changed in you, they will feel it. In the way you carry yourself, in the weight of your words, in the depth of your silence, in the precision of your choices. You are the prince of your own domain now, not by birthright, not by title, by choice, by awareness, by the sheer, unbreakable decision to see clearly in a world that begs you to stay blind. Go now, and let your silence be your sword, your awareness your armor, and your clarity your crown. Not as a performance, not as a mask, as who you truly are, awakened, sovereign, and unshakable. The powerful read Machiavelli in secret because they fear what happens when the rest of the world discovers what he knew. Now you know. And the only question that remains is not whether you will use this knowledge, but whether you have the courage to live by it. I believe you do. Machiavelli believed you do. Now prove it. Until the next chapter, walk in silence and let the world wonder what you know.